Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Coffee with Chris. I'm Chris Bratton, the founder of Bratton Law Group, and we try to utilize this forum to provide as much free information to the audience as possible so they can make informed decisions regarding any of their legal and healthcare matters. I'm very excited to have our guest today. She's worked at the State Department of Military and Veterans Affairs for the past 3.5 years and has worked in long-term care and public benefits sector for 14 years prior to that. So to say that she has a vast amount of experience would be an understatement. Welcome, Alicia Kagan. Great to have you.
Thank you.
So can you tell us how you became involved with public benefits and the VA?
Certainly. Public benefits in general, my background is in social work. That's what my bachelor's is. I started with public benefits at a county level for Office on Aging and Disability Services, and that led me into looking at veterans and how veterans are served and the process of applying for benefits and seeing how a lot of people struggle about when to apply, how to apply, whether or not they're eligible. And that led me to the state because that's where I believed I could serve the greatest amount of veterans.
Right, they certainly need a lot of assistance. And we'll get into that in just a minute. So we could probably talk for hours. The VA is very complex and there's a lot of different rules and there's a lot of help out there for veterans. But let's start with the types of claims that are available to veterans. So what claims are out there that can assist them?
So the main claims that people are interested in are the ones that can get them a monetary benefit. So there is a service-connected compensation where a veteran was either injured when they were in the military or they had a pre-existing condition that was aggravated by serving in the military, or it could be something that they were exposed to that unfortunately caused them a problem later on in life after they got out of the military. So there, in some way, something happened to them when they were in the military that causes the problems ongoing. So that is what's called a service-connected compensation. It's a process to apply for, but it's something that a lot of people can consider. That's one type of claim. The other type of claim that a lot of people are familiar with is the enhanced pension, and a lot of people call it aid in attendance. It's two separate things that people are looking at. There's a pension for usually low income, low asset veterans that they can apply for. You have to serve during at least one day during wartime, and the VA has their own idea of what wartime is and what it isn't. And then if you need assistance with activities of daily living, there's an added amount of money that can be put on that for the aid in attendance. You can also add aid in attendance to a service-connected compensation, so a lot of people get confused between the two. Those are the two main ways that you can get a direct monetary benefit. Of course, there's things like education benefits, stuff like that.
Right. So we'll get to the aid attendance in a little bit, but just briefly on that, can you get the full amount for the service-connected disability and the full amount for the aid and attendance, or is there some kind of set off there?
No, the VA will give you whichever gives you the most amount of money.
Okay.
So there are people who are service-connected at a low amount of money, and then all of a sudden they need help with their activities of daily living, and it would make more sense for them to apply for an enhanced pension with aid and attendance, so then the VA will just pay them the greater amount.
Okay. And can you explain the difference between, with regard to service-connected disability, something that's caused by an injury in the military or has its origin in? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be caused by, correct? It can be something where it has its origins in when you were in the military.
The one that most people are probably familiar with is the problems that stem from Agent Orange exposure. People who served in Vietnam, during Vietnam, people who served in Thailand, certain air bases in Thailand, the VA acquiesces and says, we exposed you to Agent Orange. There's a list of medical problems that occur usually many years later that people didn't necessarily have An example would be diabetes. They didn't necessarily have diabetes when they were in the military, but now they have diabetes. If you step foot in Vietnam or were in some of these surrounding air bases in Thailand, and there's other situations where you might be able to get service connected too, the VA will say, we don't care how you got the diabetes, we're going to service connect you because we think it was due to the Agent Orange exposure. So that's different than if you broke your foot when you were in the military and your foot still's giving you problems, that's a direct service connection.
Okay. And what's the
And then
difference
there's
between that?
aggravation.
And what's the difference between that and non-service connected disability that people are able to get?
So non-service connected disability surrounds the pension. So the VA, you have to have some sort of disability or you're above the age of 65 to apply for the pension. So the VA will say, well, you're non-service connected because you have back problems or you have heart disease. That's just all part of the non-service connected pension with aid and attendance. But they're not saying that happened to you while you were in the military. They're just saying that's what we're defining to use to qualify you for the pension or the pension with aid and attendance.
Okay. And as you said, there's some education benefits. What about healthcare benefits? What's available to veterans? There's
plenty of healthcare benefits through the VA for veterans. It depends. A lot of stuff with the VA depends. That's why I always say to people, if you're a veteran, you should at least talk to somebody because you may be eligible for stuff that you're not aware of. So the VA, I think most people are familiar with the VA hospital in Philadelphia. There's a VA hospital in Wilmington, and then the VA has clinics. There's a clinic in Northfield. There's a clinic in Cape May. There's one in Sewell. There's one in Camden. They're all over the place. And depending on when you served, depending on where you served, depending on if you're service connected or not, you're non-service connected or not, you may or may not qualify to get health care through the VA. Sometimes there's no cost to it. Sometimes they may charge you a copay for medication or for hearing aids, but it is a way to get benefits through the VA. It's another way to get benefits. So I strongly tell people, just talk to someone and see. It doesn't hurt. It's a 2-page application, 3 pages, I guess, technically, but it's a quick thing to find out whether or not you're eligible.
Now, is there generally, a lag in the time in which someone can get a procedure if they're going through the VA clinics or hospital versus, traditional health insurance and other hospitals?
There can be, but sometimes there's not. The VA, like a typical insurance company, is going to have to look at if you need a hip replacement, then we need to look at the medical criteria to make sure it makes sense for you to have a hip replacement. It's similar to what people might come up against in an HMO, where they're going to have a utilization team that's going to look at it. The VA has a program, it used to be called the Choice Program. It's now called, I think it's still called Care in the Community. They like to change the names of their stuff quite often. But that will get you, if the VA is not able to provide the surgery, let's say, in their hospital, then they will refer you out to somebody in the community that contracts with the VA. They'll pay for it, but you can see somebody out in the community. So there's no easy answer. Like there are a lot of stuff in the VA, there's no easy answer to say whether or not it would take longer. There are certain things like a transplant, let's say a transplant. The VA does transplants in the hospital in Pittsburgh 9 times out of 10. Now they'll pay for you to go there. They'll pay for you to stay there. They'll pay for your family to go there a lot of times, but they're not always going to say you can have a transplant at UPenn. It just depends.
Okay. Now, we have a lot of clients in our office, veterans, spouses of veterans, that they either aren't aware of the benefits that are out there or they choose not to seek the benefits. Why is that? Is that a lack of education? Just knowledge about what's available? What is that?
I think it's twofold. I think it is a lack of education. A lot of people just they're not aware that they're eligible for benefits. There's a big problem with that with people who served in the National Guard. They don't necessarily think they're eligible, or their neighbor or their friend or somebody told them they're not eligible. So I think part of it is a lack of education. I will say part of it is a stigma that unfortunately the VA still holds. It's a behemoth of a system, and people can get bogged down in the system. And there are people who had a bad experience with the VA when they first came out of the military, and they just are done with it. Now I can't be bothered. So it's important to find an advocate who can help you maneuver through the system and get what you are entitled to.
Right. That's very important. That's a good point. So how do you file a claim? How long does it take? What happens if you're denied? Can you go through that process?
Sure. So to file a claim, you need to have a reason to file a claim. So let's say a service connection. If you had an injury when you were in the military, we'll say the foot, you broke your foot when you were in the military. It can be as simple as filling out an application, a 526EZ. I'm not good at numbers, but 526EZ, you send it to the VA. The VA will get your records from, let's say you were in the Army, they'll get your records from the Army, and then they will see, okay, you had this injury. 9 times out of 10, they're going to want you to go for a compensation exam. Basically, you're going to see a doctor. It could be a VA doctor. It could be a non-VA doctor. And the VA doctor will look at the records from the military, look at any current records you have, and then give an opinion as to whether or not they feel the injury you had is what's causing you the problems now. That in turn gets sent to an adjudicator who then gives a rating, a percentage, and then the percentage translates into money. Depending on how strong a claim you have, how thorough you've researched your claim, I mean, it could be done in 90 days. It just depends. If it gets bogged down, right now there is some problems getting the records from the archives, from the personnel management archives, so that could bog it down. They're not doing compensation exams in person. So if you put in a claim for PTSD, that they can do virtually. But if you put in one for hearing loss, you have to go for an exam. It's going to bog it down. But you can see claims done in 90 days or so. I like to put in strong claims that don't get denied, but in case you get claims that are denied, there is a varied appeal system. There's 4 different paths that you can take, all the way up to an administrative law judge, which most advocates will help you get to that point. That's something that I would help my vets with. There's even a step after that. You can go to the Federal Circuit Court of Veterans Appeals. That's unfortunately when you need an attorney to do that part. Not unfortunately, I didn't mean that. That's when you need an attorney, because then you have to write a brief, and that's not something most advocates are going to be able to do.
So how does someone find someone reputable to help them file a claim? And is there a charge that goes along with that?
So who I work for is the New Jersey Division of the New Jersey Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. We have veterans service officers, accredited veterans service officers in every county. So I take care of Atlantic and Cape May County, but I have coworkers that are in each county. We go through training on a regular basis. We are all accredited. There is no charge for the services that we provide. And we will help a veteran with claims, with benefits, with anything that they might need or they may be entitled to. There are county service officers. Some county service officers are accredited, some are not, but they go through a significant amount of training also. And they are also for free. There are service organizations, VFWs, American Legions, that have service officers, but some of them are limited in the capacity that they can provide assistance. There are people that you can pay, and some situations warrant that. It just depends. So I say to people, start with the state or start with the county.
Right.
I will tell people if I can help them or not.
Right. Yeah, it's a good resource to have. Before we get into aid and attendance and Medicaid a little bit as well, how are compensation benefits calculated? How does somebody determine whether you're 50% disabled, and are you allowed to appeal that if you feel that percentage is low?
So there's a federal code that for some extent lists out if you're 10% for your foot, 20% for your foot, 30% for your foot. I think it leaves a lot to interpretation, and yes, you can always appeal what they give you as a rating. If they give you 20% and you feel you should be the next step up, 30%, you can appeal that. Obviously, you have to have something to say why you appeal it or why you believe it's the wrong rating, but you certainly can appeal it. You can appeal anything. It doesn't always make sense to appeal it, but you can appeal anything.
So you mentioned VA aid and attendance previously, and we see a lot of that come through our office as well. Can you explain how there's two components? Can you explain how that's broken down? And then
Correct.
also with that breakdown of that income, is either one of those components considered income for Medicaid purposes?
You can probably answer that question better than I, because it can get a little convoluted, but there is a pension, a straight pension. So if you're over 65 or you're on, let's say, Social Security disability, or you happen to be in a nursing home and you're a veteran with 1 day during wartime and you're low income, low assets, you can apply for this pension. You can spend down your income somewhat with medical expenses, but that's it. So if you get under the benchmark, there is a possibility that the VA will give you some money to bring you up to the benchmark. Or if you get to zero, they'll give you all the money that you qualify for. A lot of people look at the pension with aid and attendance. So the aid and attendance piece of it is that you need assistance with activities of daily living. And that gets you a higher amount of money each month to, in theory, pay for the people you would need to help you with the aid and attendance. Again, it's based on income, it's based on assets. It's worthwhile to take a look at. There are things you can do, like medical expenses, to spend it down if you're home and you're paying for home health aides, or paying for some expenses on a regular basis. You can use that to spend down your money. In terms of Medicaid, so, and you may disagree with me on this, but it depends on what county you're applying for Medicaid in as to how they necessarily look at it, which may not be the way the law is, but that's an argument you can have with them. Or, you know, I will have with certain, I deal a lot with Atlanta County Medicaid, so we have conversations a lot about what's eligible and what's not. A lot of county offices want a breakdown letter. So they want to see what's the income versus what's the aid and attendance part of it. Some counties will look at just the pension portion of it added to your income. Some will look at the whole thing. All right. So there may be an extra step for people to put money into what's called a QIT, a Qualified Income Trust, but I don't want to get too far into that because there are not that many people who are applying for Medicaid right now. That's a discussion they could have at that time. And sometimes the VA will cut down the money to a $90 payment if you're in a nursing home. Again, that's something you can have a conversation with your advocate if you're going to be applying for Medicaid.
Right. Yes, exactly. If those people are seeking Medicaid and already on aid and attendance. Now, for our audience, does it matter where you reside if you're going to receive aid and attendance, if you're eligible to receive aid and attendance, whether you're at home in IL, VA, or a assisted living nursing home? You can apply, right? You
can apply wherever you reside, as long as you meet the criteria.
So a couple more questions for you, and I'll let you go for today. I think this is important. I don't think a lot of people know about this. Can you tell our audience, is there an exemption for veterans with regard to New Jersey personal income taxes, any types of rebates on their property taxes, which we know New Jersey has significantly high real estate taxes? What's available for veterans out there?
So we can start with the income tax exemption. So on the New Jersey state income taxes, there is currently a $6,000 exemption for veterans. You have to have an honorable discharge or a general under honorable discharge, and you have to have, what they're looking at is active duty time. So normally you send in your DD-214. If you were regular military, you send in your DD-214, you had 90 days active duty, you qualify for that exemption. There are people who get a little confused with the National Guard or reserves. So as long as you had 90 days, doesn't have to be consecutive, just cumulative of active duty, you would also be eligible for that exemption. If you go on the New Jersey Division of Taxation website, there is a way to upload the documents to the Office of Taxation to get that exemption. If married couple, both are veterans, both can get that exemption. So you're right, it's something a lot of people are not aware of. It's been out there a couple of years. The first couple of years it was 3,000, then they raised it to 6,000. But again, if it's something people need assistance with, they can call one of the state offices of Veteran Services and we can help them with it. In terms of property taxes, most communities in the state have at least a $250 tax exemption for veterans. It's a simple application. You just apply for it. Again, you need your DD-214, your discharge paperwork, and you can easily get that against your property taxes. If somebody is 100% permanent and total service connected, and they serve during a qualifying period of wartime, which is different than the wartime for, let's say, the pension, it's what New Jersey considers wartime, it's possible that they can be eligible for a complete waiver of property taxes. So they don't pay any property taxes. But again, it's something you'd need to ask an advocate about to see if you're eligible for.
Right, right. Before I ask my last question, what's one piece of advice that you can provide to our veterans that may be seeking benefits that you feel would be very beneficial to them?
Number one, make sure you have your DD-214. And if you don't have your DD-214, we can help you get your DD-214. Number two would be just ask. Take the couple of minutes it might take to have a phone call with an advocate, with somebody from my department, because you don't know what you don't know. So you could be eligible for something, or you could have a nice conversation for 15 minutes and you'll be able to tell your buddy who served with you, this is the correct answer.
And that's what we try to stress to our clients as well. Just get the correct information, make sure you can make an informed decision, and then whatever decision you decide to make, that's up to you, but at least get the correct answers first. So where can people find you? If they do need assistance, if they have questions, can they reach out to you? Who do they contact?
Certainly. I am willing to talk to anybody, anywhere. I can be reached at my office in Atlantic City, which is 609-441-3060. The New Jersey Department of Military and Veterans Affairs has a website. You can click onto Veterans Service offices and it will list every office in the state, and you can reach out to somebody in your county, but I can take phone calls from anybody and refer them on if need be.
We very much appreciate it. Thank you, Alicia, for coming on. We appreciate all of the information, and I would encourage anyone that has any questions to reach out to you, just again, to get the answers to those questions so again, they can make an informed decision. If anybody has any questions for us, you can reach us at brattonlawgroup.com or on the phone 856-857-6007. Alicia, thank you again. Appreciate it very much. Have a great day.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.